What's up, everybody? It's your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you another episode review of The Walking Dead, Season 2, Episode 2. So before I get into this video, let me just give a quick shout out and a thanks to everybody who watched my previous episode review of The Walking Dead, liked it, commented on the video, and I got some very interesting and some very good feedback from you guys about some of the arguments and some of the points I was making in that video. So again, thank you for tuning in. All right, so let's jump straight into this because this is going to be a little bit of an interesting review. And this episode was a little bit of a downer, so let me get right into it and explain why that is. Okay, so first I'm gonna start off with the summary, and then I'm gonna give you a more analytical um view of what happened in this episode. Okay, so this time at the beginning of this episode, we get in a sort of alternate beginning. If you remember the first episode of season one, where Rick is in the car with Shane and he's talking about the argument that happened that morning. And that was also the morning, remember, where he got shot. Okay, so now we get that same morning, but this time from Lori's point of view. So this is when Shane comes to her. Well, first she's talking to a woman. I don't think we know who she is, but she's talking to her about her relationship with Rick and how they've hit sort of a rough patch, and she's questioning whether she loves him or not. And Shane pulls up in the cop car and explains to her that Rick has been shot. And so what we have here is basically a kind of foreshadowing. It foreshadows one of the themes or the relationship between two themes in this episode rather, which is the relationship between ethics and parenthood, or rather the conflict between them as we see later on in the episode. Okay, so basically how this episode breaks down is that the group has been fragmented into three parts. The first part deals with the aftermath of episode one, where Carl has been shot by a hunter by accident. So we see Rick um, carrying Carl and racing to the house where there's a doctor who can help save his son's life. They get to the doctor and we find out that not Rick, Carl needs a blood transfusion. So he gets a blood transfusion. However, from Rick and his son have the same blood type, so he gives his son a blood transfusion. And we find out that the damage to Carl is quite extensive, to such an extent that they're going to need a respirator so that the doctor can perform surgery and remove the bullet fragments from his body. However, they don't have any of this equipment, so what they have to do is go to a FEMA camp um, that's been, overrun by walkers, and they have to get the medical equipment so that they can perform the surgery on Carl. And Shane elects to do this because obviously Rick can't do it. He's given too much blood and he's woozy, and plus he needs to be by his son's side. And the gentleman who accidentally shot Carl is also going to be accompanying Shane on this endeavor to get the medical supplies that they need. There's a sort of not a plot twist, but something happens at the end with that, and I don't want to spoil that, so I'm just gonna skip over that part. Meanwhile, there's the other well, the second fragment of the group, which consists of Daryl, Andrea, Carol, Glenn, and Lori are they're still in the woods and they're still trying to find Sophia. But of course, since well they hear the gunshot, the point where Carl gets shot, but nobody knows what's going on, and they decide to just keep looking for Sophia and hope that everything will be for the best. A woman who was staying at the house with the doctor. I'm not sure who she is, but she comes and finds Lori and brings her back to the house to where Carl and Rick are. Um, Also, the third group, or the third fragment of the group rather, consists of T-Dog and Dale. So if you remember, in the first episode of this season, T-Dog cut himself on some sharp piece of metal, it looked like. And now he has a blood infection, and he's, has a fever, and so he's sort of delirious. But Dale doesn't have any antibiotics to give him. So they continue to just, scrounge around and scavenge for medicine and supplies or whatever. So that's basically how the summary of this episode breaks down. Okay, so now into the analysis. It looks like my fears have come true. Here's what I mean by that. Um, at this point, it doesn't look like we're going to get much narrative progression. Because they've basically used these plot devices to slow down the pace of the story and basically bring the narrative progression of the story to a halt. Um, the kid, Sophia, is lost, and we know we can't continue with the story until she's found, or at least until that subplot is satisfactorily resolved. And the same thing is true with Carl. We know we can't get any sort of narrative progression with the story unless Carl, the subplot with Carl is satisfactorily resolved. And it looks like that's going to take a little bit longer, given what happens at the end of the episode. So, I mean, the only way I can say it is that this fucking sucks. I mean, this just sucks. Because, these are the types of plot devices that will kill your story. Um, we understand that there will be some standstill with in terms of narrative progression of the story, but now we've got two separate subplots that are impeding the narrative progression of the story, and that are not really interesting. I mean, one involves trying to find a kid lost in the woods, and the other one involves trying to save this kid's life, um, and then have to deal with the aftermath of saving his life. Presumably, he will be saved somehow, but then he's going to have to recover, and so there's going to be all this downtime. And I just, want to get past this, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. So it looks like there's going to be at least a couple of episodes tied up with these subplots. Um, in terms of Rick, last time I said that Rick had a sort of hero complex, and that he was battling with the tension or the conflict between ethics and efficiency. And now we get to see a sort of ironic reversal with the roles of Carol, the mother of Sophia, the missing girl, and Rick. So we get in a scene where Rick is starting to question his ethics and to start to think about the consequences of engaging in a commitment to a sort of black and white notion of ethics. And we get a scene where he's talking to Shane, and he says to Shane over and over again, he says, little girl goes missing. You look for her, plain and simple. And he just keeps repeating that and repeating that. And so we get to the situation where we realize that Rick's it's at least in part because of Rick's decision to refuse to leave Sophia behind, that Carl has been shot. And I said this in the last episode review, and I'll say it again. I always thought it was a fucking stupid idea to bring a fucking child along on, basically what amounts to an expedition to try and locate a missing child. That was just stupid on his part. He should not have done that. They should have left him with Dale and T-Dog back at the RV, and none of this would have happened. But be that as it may, now we get to see how Rick has to handle this balance between his commitment to ethics, that is, his commitment to doing the right thing, and what's required of him the duty that's required of him as a father. And so even when we see that he's given the blood transfusion and he's given too much blood and he's woozy and he's barely able to stand, he still wants to go along with Shane and the other gentleman to get the medical supplies that they need in order to save Carl's life. And Shane has to explain to him, listen, man, I understand that you want to do everything you can to help, but you're in no position to do that at this moment. And on top of that, you have a duty. It's your duty as a father to stay here with your son. And if Carl was to pass away while you were out trying to get these medical supplies, then you would never forgive yourself. And so now we come up into a situation where Rick, I think, is going to have to start to realize that there are limits to ethics in extreme situations where they're in the middle of a fucking zombie apocalypse. And he's going to have to realize his own ethical limitations as a human being, and to realize his own limitations in a practical sense as a human being, because like I said before, Rick can't do everything. I mean, there's just some things that human beings can't do, and he's gonna have to come to terms with that. And so that's basically how Rick's doing in this episode. Also, there was this interesting scene with Andrea where the second fragment of the group is in the woods, and like I said before, they're still looking for Sophia. However, Andrea almost gets caught by a walker. And at this point, I just have to ask the question if, you know, some of these people, we understand that they're in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. I get that. We understand that they're being placed in a survival situation which they have not been in before and which they're probably not used to. I understand that. But I have to ask the question of whether or not these people are, stupid, really. I mean, you have to ask that question. They know that there are walkers in the woods, and they understand how dangerous this is, so they know that they have to stick together as a group in order to fend off the possibility of an attack by zombies. However, I don't know how this happens because we're cut into this scene. But somehow Andrea winds up getting so far away from the group that when she's attacked by the walker, even when the other members of the group are, running full speed towards her, they still can't get to her in time. And I'm just like, I mean, come on, man. I understand you're looking for this little girl, but Jesus Christ, man, stick together as a group and, be smart about how you go about trying to locate this missing girl. Otherwise, you're going to end up in, dumbass situations like this. Also, we get more of the tension between Andrea and Dale. So when Andrea comes back, that sort of icy relationship is reestablished because Glenn explains to Dale that um, um, Andrea was almost caught by a walker, and so you see this sort of staring match between Dale and Andrea. And at this point, even from my own personal standpoint, I have to question whether or not I would be willing to continue to live in this sort of situation. I mean, because if Dale hadn't interfered, and I still think that he did this unethically, if he hadn't unethically interfered with Andrea's, decision to kill herself, then she wouldn't be alive in this situation, and she wouldn't have to go through this daily horror of having to fend for her life against these goddamn zombies. And, from my own personal standpoint, um, I think I probably would have stayed behind at the CDC and blown myself up. And that's just me personally. But I mean, there has to be more to life than wandering around, which what is basically now um, an urban wasteland with probably millions upon millions of zombies, not having access to, food or medicine, or I mean, it's just a fucked up situation, and I don't think I would be willing to live in that sort of situation. But um tell me your thoughts on whether or not you agree with me or whether or not you disagree. And I understand that you have to keep hope alive, you have to keep the faith and all of that other stuff, but there just comes a point in time when you have to realize the extreme circumstances of the situation and just be realistic with yourself. But like I said, give me your thoughts on whether or not you agree or disagree. Some other thoughts on this episode. Like I said before, the narrative progression of the storyline has just come to a standstill, because we have to locate Sophia and we have to deal with saving Carl's life in the aftermath of what will um, most assuredly be his recovery, and being wrapped up with several episodes and resolving these subplots, which I don't think are particularly interesting. But I want to be able to see the rest of the world. I mean, it's alluded to, at least in the CDC, when Dr. Jenner says that, France was the last place online and now they're offline. So it's alluded to that this zombie apocalypse has reached global proportions, and I want the writers of the show to sort of explore the global scale and the global scope of this catastrophe. And so I want to explore the situation. I want to be introduced to more of the scale and the magnitude of what's going on, because right now we have our little band or little group of survivors, and it's just very localized right now. And I thought that what would happen, at least in season two, would be that they would venture out into the rest of the this urban wasteland, and eventually get to Fort Benning. But it looks like that's not going to happen now. Also, um my prediction is that since the progression of the story has come to a standstill because of the Sophia subplot and the Carl subplot, um, my intuition is that season two will have to revolve around, at least a significant portion of season two, probably about half, will have to revolve around the resolution of these subplots. And it probably can't be any other way, because it's going to take some time for Carl to recover, and you still got to find the missing girl. So that's my that's my prediction for at least the first half of season two. And also there was this thing about T Dog, where T Dog was trying to convince Dale to leave the other people in the group behind, by just taking the RV. I think well, I guess he was kind of scared of being, as he called it, live bait, just out on the highway and liable to be being attacked at any time. And I wonder if this is just a reintroduction of the ethical conflict that I talked about in the first episode, that is the tension between ethics and efficiency, or if he was just being delirious. And I'm sort of wondering about, what's going to happen with that, and if that's sort of sowing the seeds for an eventual betrayal by T Dog, of the other members of the group. So that's just something I'm wondering about. And last but not least, where the fuck is Sophia? Jesus Christ. I mean, okay, one episode is understandable, you can't find the girl. Two episodes is, kind of understandable, you can't find the girl. But now we're going into three episodes where you can't find this goddamn girl. I mean, first of all, let's think about this. Let's be realistic and reasonable. If she is really trapped in the woods with the walkers, and we know that there are walkers in the woods, because Andrea got attacked by a walker and was almost got caught by a walker. So we know there are walkers in the woods. And at this point you have to question the writing on the part of the writers, because this is really straining my suspension of disbelief at this point. The girl's lost in the woods, and presumably we have to find this girl, because we can't move forward unless we do. But if she's in the woods with walkers, then the likelihood that she survived by herself for a couple of days with no food, no water, and liable to be attacked by walkers looks like the probability that she's alive is heading south really fast. So, please resolve this goddamn subplot and please explain to us where the fuck this girl is. So overall, because of what I said about the narrative progression of the story coming to a standstill, and even though the writers are still doing an ethical job of handling the sort of ethical conflicts of being in the situation and showing the sort of psychological aspects of being in the situation, I have to give this episode a tentative score of, I'll say 7.5 on my nerd scale. And I say that because, and I say that tentatively because we just don't know what's going to happen, because there was, a sort of cliffhanger at the end of this episode. And because, it looks like a significant portion of the second season is going to have to deal with the resolution of these subplots. And so 7.5 out of 10 on this episode um, of The Walking Dead. So, again, this is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.